Welcome back. Well, it's been called the Electoral Reforms Tour, or rally, as you'd like to hear, when Zach Nyirinjire, at least, excuse me, Bishop Zach Nyirinjire, Mr. Olara Otunnu, Mugisha Muntu, Kizza Besigye, Mr. Nobert Mao, and Sheila, I always forget her last name. Kawamara, there we go.
The head of Uganda Women Network.
Yes. And we are privileged to have Mr. Olara Otunnu in the studio with us to help us understand exactly where the opposition is coming from with these terms, specifically with the electoral reforms. Thank you so much for coming to the studio.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
It's always a pleasure to have you because you give us exactly what the opposition is thinking at the moment and in the clearest form possible.
Thank you.
Very quickly, Mr. Otunnu, with this tour, going all over the country, you've talked about the northern region, parts of Mbale. Before we get to what happened to Mbale, what is the intention of the opposition with this electoral reforms rally? What is the intention fundamentally?
Well, the purpose is this. It is really summarized in this, the call for free and fair elections. And it isn't just the opposition parties. This brings together various leaders from various sectors of Ugandan society, certainly political parties, a large number of civil society organizations and NGOs, more than 25, and a very prominent select group of national leaders, and the circle is expanding. We have come together on a non-partisan basis, meaning it's not this political party or that political party. It is not about DP, UPC, or FDC. It's about all Ugandans, demanding that Ugandans, like other citizens elsewhere in the world, deserve to have a genuinely free and fair elections. So here, we've identified the key issues which have bedeviled free and fair elections to date. We have proposed very precise measures to cure those ills. We have called for a national forum. We call it National Consultation on Free and Fair Elections, where all stakeholders are represented to discuss the proposals and to come up with a national consensus on a new system for organizing and managing elections in our country.
Mr. Otunnu,
this is what this is about.
Yes, thank you. I think that's been very clearly stated. The NRM Special Mobilizer, Henry Mayega, put out a public statement today that the NRM indeed has their own set of electoral reforms that will be discussed in Parliament or tabled in Parliament. Why is that so different from what you've just talked about?
Two things. The current parliament, as you know, has no legitimacy. It is really the NRM caucus at work. In fact, everything is discussed and decided in State House with Yoweri Museveni presiding.
President.
Well, it's Mr. Yoweri Museveni. Excuse me, he's also president. I don't have to call him president.
Mr. Otunnu,
he's Mr. Yoweri Museveni. Is he not?
Let's respect the presidency. For the purpose of this show.
I'm sorry, it has nothing to do with respect. You are Mr. Who?
Okay, just say Mr. Museveni.
Yes, Mr. Museveni, that's what I said.
Okay, then continue.
That's what I said. I said Mr. Obama, Mr. Museveni,
President
Mr. Cameroon.
Yoweri Museveni.
Yes, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Do you have a problem with the term President Yoweri Museveni?
Oh my goodness. I'm talking about Mr. Yoweri Museveni presiding over the NRM caucus in State House. Okay. And then they bring this to the House of Parliament for rubber stamping. Okay. That is why we say what we have is a political problem. It requires a political solution in the first instance. That's why we say there should be a national forum with all stakeholders, including Yoweri Museveni, including NRM, and then what is agreed upon in that forum is taken to Parliament for whatever formal actions are required in terms of amending the laws, amending the Constitution. That is what we are proposing. That is different from what Henry Mayega is talking about. Yes. So this is something which has to be owned by the people of Uganda as a whole. It has to be different from what we have today. It has to be a consensus. All stakeholders should feel they accept this as legitimate. That's what we are proposing.
Okay. Before I get into the next question, you'll forgive me for interrupting you, but we have young viewers, and it is important for them to understand the issues of ethics. In the international community, for instance, in the United States, where you have been, Republicans may not agree with Democrats, but they always refer to Barack Obama as Mr. President, even though they've gone on not to agree with him. So for the sake of our young viewers, will you on this show refer to the presidency in terms of Mr. President? It's just an ask for the show. Now let's get into the question.
Can I say a word about that?
Yes.
I've lived in the US for many years.
Yes.
And everybody refers to Mr. Obama. Everybody refers to Mr. Blair. They refer to Mr. Cameroon. Absolutely. There's
But when they are addressing the president, when they are addressing the presidency,
when they are
say,
meeting the
Mr.
president, they say, Mr. President. I'm not with Yoweri Museveni in front of me. I'm talking about Mr. Museveni, Mr. Obama, Mr. Blair. Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
But for the purposes of this show, will you refer to him as Mr. President?
I am sorry.
Let's get into the next question. Free and fair.
You can't demand such a condition of me. Why?
Free.
For goodness sake, what's wrong with us in Uganda?
Free and fair elections. Many observers say that right from the days of the UPC, throughout our political parties, whether it is within the NRM holding their own internal elections, they are not free and fair. Whether it is FDC holding internal elections, there is always cry for foul play. I don't know what the case is in UPC. Have we come to the place where even within our internal systems, we can hold free and fair elections before we can demand that there be free and fair elections nationally?
Well, there should be internal democracy within all the political parties. When they're electing their leaders, it should be free and fair. But none of that should provide any excuse, any pretext for not having genuinely free and fair elections at the national level. What we are discussing right now is the national elections. We've identified issues such as, just so that we are concrete, an electoral commission which is not independent. It is aligned with the NRM, is part of the NRM rigging machine. We've identified the issue of the register of voters, which is not clean, is not verifiable, it's got ghost voters, it's got those from Rwanda and Sudan and Congo, it's got people who are never born on that list. We want a clean list. We've identified the issue of the role of the military and the police in interfering, intimidating people, rigging the elections. We identified the fact that political parties who are at the center of elections are not allowed to move freely, to have public rallies, to demonstrate, to do the things that feed and define free and fair elections. So we've identified a number of issues, not a laundry list, but about 12 issues altogether. And we've gone one step further and said for the Electoral Commission, this is what needs to be done to make it truly independent. For the register of voters, this is what needs to be done to clean it up and so on.
Mr. Otunnu, you missed my question. Before we have national elections, we're going to have party elections choosing their candidates. If, for instance, within the FDC, who are signatories to this, there are still cries of foul in the election of Nandala Mafabi versus Mugisha Muntu, shouldn't we first clean the voters' registers of all parties and make sure that parties can hold free and fair elections? Then when we have proved that we have cleaned those systems, we can move on to the national. Have we not jumped the gun?
Well, when I was elected president of UPC, we were 8 candidates, and I got, I think, close to 80% of the votes. There were absolutely no complaints about the process at all. There are people who may disagree with my particular vision, my particular direction, but nobody challenged the electoral process in which I was selected president of UPC. In FDC, they've had some difficulties after the competition between Mr. Nandala Mafabi and General Mugisha Muntu, but to the best of my knowledge, this has now been resolved. You've heard Mr. Nandala Mafabi say General Mugisha Muntu can represent FDC not only as president, but also, if he wishes, as presidential candidate in 2016. Now, having free and fair election doesn't mean there are no complaints and no contests. As long as the complaints and contests are processed and resolved in the manner provided by the constitution of that organization. So that's what we're talking about. But again, I emphasize, my dear friend, let that not be an excuse, a pretext for not addressing the paramount issue of free and fair elections at the national level, which concerns all Ugandans, whether they belong to DP, UPC, FDC, or belong to no party. They all deserve to have their vote count, and it should be their vote which elects the president, which elects the party that goes to power. That is not the situation right now. Okay. And we are proposing how that should be done.
Well, Mr. Otunnu, I really appreciate the clarity with which you have explained why these rallies are necessary. At the same time, I really don't think that electoral reforms and the NRM are mutually exclusive, no matter what people think. I think that there is a bridging there that perhaps needs to be made clear. I think the bigger question is why...
Can I, by the way, just on that say right away that we have NRM participants in this project.
Yes.
In fact, the lady you referred to a little earlier, who's a member of our coordinating team, Ms. Sheila Kawamara,
yes.
She is an NRM member. Father Gaetano, who is very active from Kabale, is an NRM member. We have a number of NRM people who also want free and fair elections, and we welcome all Ugandans who agree with the agenda for free and fair elections.
Yes. Sheila Kawamara was actually in our studio earlier this week, and we understand her to be one of those people who really highlights the ills of you know, some of our nations. She came here talking about what happened in Rwanda and the genocide. But let's refocus. This wholesome message of free and fair elections in Bali, this free and fair elections message was taken to Mbale. What do you think, how did it get lost in translation? Because what we hear out of Mbale was the chaos as opposed to the message. Why is that the lowest common denominator every time the opposition steps out? Is chaos rather than the cause?
Yes, actually, it did not get lost in translation. Quite the opposite. We were horrified by the conduct of the police in Mbale, Soroti, Kabale, and Kasese.
What happened in Mbale?
What did the police do? The people were completely peaceful, no violence whatsoever, and suddenly the police, on orders from above, unleashed terror on peaceful citizens and national leaders. They go out of their way to humiliate national leaders, the leader of opposition, Bishop Zach Neringiye, the leader of FDC, myself and others.
Was the police
Honorable
notified?
Cecilia Gwala. Oh yes.
The police was notified.
Well, what is required, just so that your viewers understand, what is required is notification.
Yes.
On the 13th of February, I wrote on behalf of the consortium of leaders and groups who are sponsoring this this campaign. I wrote to the Minister of Internal Affairs and to Inspector General of Police, giving our national program. At the local level, all our coordinating committees in Mbale, in Soroti, in Masaka, wrote to the district police commander, giving local information about venue, about time, about the kind of meeting. Is it a public rally? Is it a town hall meeting? And this procedure, which is what is required of us, worked without any problem in Bushenyi.
The police was aware?
Absolutely. In Bushenyi, in Masaka, we had a public rally, in Barara, in Jinja, in Tororo, and then suddenly, following exactly the same procedure,
well, then
they clamped on us in Mbale.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this then, Mr. Otunnu. It's obvious that the police as a body has come out and apologized for what happened in Mbale.
No, they have not.
They have, because Kale Kahira before Parliament has said that he...
Not when he met with us.
He actually said that they were unfortunate events, and that
And he apologized for them?
He did apologize, and he
That's
indeed,
good news.
The
That's
other
good news.
the other thing that he did is he went ahead and made changes within the police body to make sure that these sort of incidences aren't happening. I guess the issue is it hasn't been replicated. You went on to other cities, and the police cooperated with you.
Well, we've now had 3 stages to this. We had the beginning of this campaign, the towns I mentioned to you, from Jinja to Mbarara to Tororo to Masaka, where it went smoothly without a hitch. Then suddenly, all hell broke loose in Mbale, in Soroti, in Kabale, in Kasese. Then we had a meeting, a really very important meeting a week ago, Wednesday night, with the Minister of Internal Affairs.
This was at the Independence Grounds?
Yes,
okay.
And with the Inspector General Police, in which we went, 1, to express our horror about the conduct of the police in the 4 towns. 2, to insist that the Minister and Inspector of General Police put a complete end to that conduct, the partisan and violent conduct of the police. And 3, that they guarantee that as we move onwards, forward with our campaign, there would be no interference by the police. And 4, that they would continue to honor the mode of communication required by the law, which is what I wrote to the Minister and Inspector General of Police, now 4 letters, and what our local teams have been doing and communicating to the district police commander. Now, the 2 leaders promised us...
Just a quick question there. Did the IGP agree to the 4 conditions you set?
Okay, so that
They did.
question,
Okay.
that question is going to be answered.
Sorry.
We're going to take a short break,
All right.
and we really want
I'll
clarity.
answer that. All right,
Yeah,
very
we
well.
really want clarity
Very well,
on,
I'm happy
on
to
that
do so.
issue.
Very well.
Samson, thanks so much for asking that. I really wanted to get into it, but I can see my
Will
producer
you
calling
pronounce
for a break.
President Museveni right now before we close?
President Yoram Museveni.
Very well. Very
All right.
good.
Well, our
That now completes this segment.
well, our conversation continues with Mr. Olara Otunnu. He's giving us a blow-by-blow account of the tour that we're talking about, electoral reforms as we head into 2016. Plus, we'll ask him about that special visit that he made to the home of the fallen Archbishop Janan Luwum, all coming up right here on Urban Today.
This is